Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Coaching Uncovered podcast. My name is Chris Berry, and I'm going to be your host for today. Joining us, we have Jessica McClure. Jessica, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Chris. How are you doing?
I'm doing amazing. Enjoying my Thursday spooky morning and
Oh,
excited to
yes. Happy
chat.
Halloween.
I
Yes.
keep forgetting. I've literally been in calls and I'm looking and it's like, okay, tomorrow's the first. Wait, today's the 31st? What? So
It's
it's
so different when you don't get excited about throwing on a costume and going out on the street, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, before we dive into, more about your coaching business, what you do and everything, could you just give everyone that's either watching or listening a little background about what you coach people on?
Yes. So I am a leadership executive coach. And so what that means is I coach people into their most authentic way of leading. So I typically, my sweet spot are people who are a bit in transition. So be it the ICs who are now managing a bunch of people, or someone who is going up to the executive level or into the C-suite. So it's that concept of what got us here might not get me there. So we're usually really good at something that allows us to move into the next level of leadership. And then once we get into that leadership, sometimes that those same traits are not what's going to take us to that next level. So I'm really a thought partner to shift perspectives with my clients and how to lead in an authentic way and
I
lift
like it.
those up around them as well.
Okay. So, obviously, specific in it, it's very apparent that you are very well versed, we'll say, in this, and just even that response itself. When we kind of zoom back to the very beginning, as you got started in this space, what made you want to go down this path? And was it this path in the beginning, or has it kind of transformed along the way?
Yeah, it's definitely transformed. So originally, so I was in the corporate world and I leased space in shopping centers, like class A big fashion shopping centers around the country. And what I originally did when I started in my business world was I leased, you might know those little kiosks in the middle of the malls.
Yep.
So I started with kiosks right when they first
Okay.
started, way back in the day. And
Yep.
say like when a store goes out of business and like a Spirit Halloween comes in or one of those little mom and pop shops comes in. That's what I originally did. And so I helped people expand their businesses into malls. And it was very much their first time doing it. So I was really a thought partner to them. How do you want to approach this? What do you want to do? What do you want to look at? Da 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 da. And so I did that for over 12 years, eventually going into permanent real estate. And then I took a break in order to have my kids. And when I was ready to come back into the workforce, and my old boss was like, okay, Jess, time to come back out of sabbatical. And I'm like, I don't know that I still want to do that. I still felt like I had the imposter fraud, but I was not, that concept of, is this the thing for me? Am I making the biggest impact that I can? Am I just chasing shopping malls right now and fashion and all that? What else do I want to do in the world? But I loved the component of helping people. And so when I was starting to think, what is that next possibility, I had just this concept of, I don't know what it is. And weirdly enough, my husband at the time, we were walking in a mall at Costco actually, and he was like, "What about coaching?" And I'm like, "That's so weird that you would say that." Like that's had always been in my brain a little bit in the past. And so what I had just finished reading this book. It was called Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg. I don't know if you'd heard about this. This is quite a while ago. And the whole concept, she was at Facebook. I forget what she was, COO or something like that. And basically the concept of this book was put your head down, climb the ladder. You can do it. I feel like a fraud. I sometimes don't know what I'm doing. Fake it till you'll make it. You'll be fine. And I hated the book. It was super popular across the country. And I'm like, no, I hate that. I don't want people to just fake it till they make it and put their head down and climb the ladder. So originally my concept was lean out, and I was going to be a coach that got everybody out of the corporate world. So I went through the whole certification, all of that, started coaching people. And what I found is that corporate people started coming into my world. And as much as I loved people coaching them out of their roles into jobs, typically when you know what you want as an entrepreneur, you know what you're going after, you know how to start. This is why we're in this conversation today, right? But what I found is when I started coaching people in the corporate world, those were the people that were stuck. Those
Mm,
were the people who didn't sometimes didn't have the passion within their role about what is going to light me up. And so when I started working with them and helped them find peace, transformation, and empowerment within the role that they had in their corporate world, it all started clicking even more. And
mm,
so I eventually just naturally shifted into leadership and executives. And I still coach people sometimes out of their role
mhm,
because when you're working with people and then they get this idea of, oh, I don't want to be here anymore. And I'm like, great, let's coach you out of the role.
mm,
But I often say you have to be really steady in the role that you're at or else you're going to take those same habits, same patterns, same beliefs with you to that next role and be happy again. Or, I mean,
mm.
be unhappy again. So you
Yep.
can't be chasing something into the role.
Hmm.
Did I answer your question?
You did. Well, I mean, you gave the whole genealogy of obviously starting off in kind of the malls and then going into, okay, we're going
Yeah.
to do this. I don't want to do it. And then it kind of morphed into now the executives and everything. So the
Yeah.
next question that I'm curious to know a little bit more about, obviously, you've been doing this for a little while now. There's always the ups, there's the downs, there's the challenges, right? What have been some of your favorite parts of owning your business? And what have been some of the biggest challenges of your business?
So I've been doing this since 2015. And so I love a good spreadsheet. I love, like, I literally have a spreadsheet that starts in 2015 to
Mm,
today that, like, goes through. I could tell you how much I made in
mm,
August of 2016 and compare it to today. And I have percentages showing me what the growth is year after year and yada, yada, yada. I can
yeah.
tell you every single client I worked with
Mm,
and when they started and when they completed. So I know, like, the average client is with me between 6 to 8 months. Like, I
mm,
can tell you data, and
yeah.
I love that
Yeah.
because there's also some clarity in data that you can see. So that's good. Or when people come back to me years later, things like that. What is challenging for me is I think the hardest thing about being a coach for me, this is not consistent, I'm sure, for everybody, is that you don't know who you're going to be working with in 6 months.
Mm,
So, there is an ebb and flow of clients, and it's not, you want an end date. You don't want to be like, and I do have clients that I've been working with for years,
mhm,
but for the most part, you want to get in, you want to come in with what you want to get out of coaching and you want to
mm,
achieve it. And then you want to take those skills and move on in your life. So there is, and when you decide to start coaching with somebody, you usually want to start. You've got that desire, you're going to do it. So you don't want to be on a wait list for 6 months to be able to work with a person. And so
yep.
I really try to be in flow with people that I can work with. But there does come sometimes where you're like, oh crap. Oh, wonder who's going to be in the pipeline in 6 months from now, or should I be doing something to get them in the pipeline? Hence our
Mm,
conversation.
yeah.
So that
Sure.
will be, I would say that's the hardest part is just the consistency or
Mm,
lack of consistency in coaching. And
mm,
especially now because I truly believe that competition is a healthy thing because if you're ever on a call with me, and we're doing like an initial conversation, I will always say to you, I will never be that person who is like, you need to book within the next 30 minutes in order to get this deal and be able to work with me. I'll be like, go home, take a minute, interview 3 other coaches. We're like real estate. You'll know when you've got the right one. You'll know when you have that feeling that they're going to get you to where you want to go. And I want to make sure that all of my clients feel that way. And so I don't even know what my point of what that was. And so with that, I think that there is a little bit of flow with clients. Kind of lost my train of thought on that one.
no, you're all good. Well, you're taking through the inconsistency that comes within it. and then really just
Yeah.
kind of determining how can it be there. And even a follow-up question I'll have with you, because obviously when it comes to consistency, this is one of the biggest challenges I see with a lot of coaches is a lot of them rely, I won't even actually plant seeds, getting leads consistently, getting clients consistently. That is one of the hardest parts of it. So how are you currently getting clients into your business? Just let's solely focus on kind of more of like a marketing side of like lead generation. How are you currently getting people into your business?
So luckily, a lot of it's word of mouth. And so a lot of it is based on people that I've worked with before, telling other people. I don't even know how people come to me half the time because it's all
Mm,
just, oh, I heard about you or I saw you or yada, yada, yada. So
mm,
I think word of mouth is important and it helps to know you're in the right place at the right time. Like there is a
mhm,
little bit, I want to say, like, universal a belief in you're in the right, doing the right thing. We're supporting you. You're where you should be at. Then I also do a newsletter.
mhm,
I do LinkedIn. And I will say LinkedIn is one of the better things for
mm,
my marketing, in that I am one of the LinkedIn top executive coaches. And that is just based on how often I post and the response that the posts have been gotten. That probably not proper English, but I think I got it back in January. And
mm,
so I'll add a little woo in here, but whenever I post anything on LinkedIn, I always do it with the caveat of let it just reach the right person that needs to see it. Let me be of service. And
mm,
whoever needs to see it is going to see it. And I can't tell you how many people will just reach out and say, hey, I saw your post and it spoke so much to me about what I'm going through right now, or
mm,
whatever it is, or inspired me to write or something like that. So it's been a really good marketing tool for me, actually.
mm. Okay. So people come in, whether it be, for example, LinkedIn, making the post and kind of doing that, that attracts people, or word of mouth. You get
Yep.
them, they schedule a call, they're interested. You touched upon something before, and when it comes to sales, this is one of the things that coaches, they love what they do, yet they can't stand selling. So what is your sales process that you do to take someone from I'm interested to actually being a paying client for you?
Get them on a 30-minute phone call. And
Okay.
so I think a big mistake that a lot of new coaches make is
Mm,
that in that introductory phone call, they talk the whole time. They tell
mm,
them why they're good, what they've done, what they can do for them, yada, yada, yada. When I get on a 30-minute phone call, introductory call with you, I will say my name. I'll explain what I think coaching is, which is the difference between therapy, mentoring, coaching. I'll kind of go
mm,
through that in a quick, 5 minutes. And then I'll be like, at the end of our day, or at our end of our time today, what I want you to know is if I am the right coach for you, and I'll tell you how we can work together. But in between that, I want to coach you. And I want you to know what it's like to be coached by me. So we just jump right in. And I will tell you, out of everybody that I mean, I think I don't even know how many people I've worked with, but let's say 400 people, 500 people, that I can probably count on 10 fingers the amount of people who've asked me that they want to know more about me before we start. Everyone is just it takes a lot of nerve to call a coach. It takes
mm,
a lot of nerve to show up. And so the relief that they feel to just start talking to somebody and have them listen to what's going on and what they want to get at the end of it
mm,
is just so, I think, important. And I think one of my strongest gifts is really making people feel comfortable right from that get-go and trust and create a trusted space so that like it's not uncommon to have people cry in that first 30 minutes just because they feel seen for the first time.
mm,
And so I think that's the most important thing in regards to selling. And then in the early stages, sure, I was probably afraid to say how much I charge and all that. But now I just, after we're done with coaching, I'll say, so that's what it's like to coach with me. How do you feel right now? What do you think about it? And then I'll say, this is what I charge. This is how much I do suggest, um, typically a minimum of 6 months. Because I will say this often is that in coaching, there is this process of the dip, which is, I hate this. It works for everybody else for me. She's too expensive. This sucks. And it usually lasts one session, and you got to show up to get to the other side of it. That's your ego holding on tight, and we got to get through that. And so that's how I handle the sales process.
Mm-hmm. Leading with that initial call, what it's like to be coached with me, going through, and then at the tail end, it's there. Is this something that you essentially just lay out of, as you just said, look, here's what it's going to cost to work with me. And you talked about something before about rather than just having some sort of ongoing process, it's very outcome driven. We're going to work together. This is what we're going to accomplish. Is that also what you're outlining at the end of this call with the person? Like, if we work together, it's going to be 6 months. What does that look like?
Yeah, very similar to that. This is what you're going to get at the end of it. And also, I am not a very because so here's what is, and I will tell my clients this too. Some people will come in saying, I want this, KPI, ROI, yada, yada, yada. Great. Okay, let's focus on those things. But usually in that last session, when we're complete, they'll say the greatest gift that I got out of this was confidence. I feel
Mm,
stronger. Like I do a rating system when people first come in with me of like 10 things, and they
mm,
rate themselves on a scale of 1 to 100. And then we do it again at the end. And I often see a 20% leap. And if not 50% of the things, 70% of the things. And so that's the goal, is how do you feel afterwards? How are you more confident? And how has your life changed because of what we've worked on?
I like that a lot. So someone signs up, they've gone through this process, like, yes, Jessica, let's do this. What are some of the things that you do to keep clients happy? We'll pose this kind of like a first question, but then on top of that too, as you mentioned, they go through these ebbs and flows of, yeah, I can. It's the trying to recall the exact terminology that they use for it, but there's uninformed optimism, right? And then you go and you start learning, wow, this is actually kind of tough. And then you have like the valley of despair, like, oh my gosh, like I don't know if I can do this. So number one, how do you keep clients happy and getting results? And then part two of that as well, how do you handle that dip? How do you handle these internal limiting beliefs that hold people back? You talked about the ego. What are some things you do with that too?
Yeah. So a big part of the conversation that I have is with people is we have a desire of where we want to go forward. That's the
Mm-hmm.
foot on the gas. This is
Okay.
taken from the immunity to change framework. So
Okay.
you have a foot on the gas of where you want to go. What is that
Mm-hmm.
goal at the end of 6 months? And then you have a foot on the brake, which is, if okay, so let's talk leadership, right? Somebody's in a leadership role and they're like, my team's not performing that like the way they need to, yada, yada, yada. But the foot on the brake is, I don't want to be that asshole boss. I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to be a micromanager. I don't want to be this. I don't want to be that. I don't want to be this. And so what happens is they keep the foot on the brake, even though they want to move forward, and they go nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to look at it like, okay, this is an experiment. And so coaching is just a little tiny pinpoint of the process. It's what's happening in the weeks between our talking. You
Mm-hmm.
know, what are you putting into action? What do you notice? So I always say it's like a science experiment. Right now in the call, we have a hypothesis is if you go forward and push, put the foot on the gas of what accountability is like. How do you want to be like a leader? How do you want to be seen? And then start putting these things in action and then notice what happens. Are people like, oh my gosh, they're such an asshole? Or are they like, wow, I'm empowered now because
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing the thing that I'm supposed to do? And as we take these science experiments, the foot comes off the brake. And so then they start moving forward. And I'll say I just had a client last week, how long? I don't know for sure how long we've been working together, but we've been talking about the same thing. And you will find that there's a pain point that we talk about a lot during sessions, but the pain point starts to shift. But most people kind of come in with this pain point, be it like accountability or expecting more of people or finishing things or whatever it is. And I was with a client and I was like, I feel like you're not doing the work in between the sessions. And they're like, I come in, I'm so jazzed after our sessions. I know what I want to do and da da da. And then I fall back into my own patterns. I'm like, yeah, I see it. And so what are we going to do to make you change your patterning? And so this time it was, I'm a big person of like, if you looked at my desk, you'll see I have, I'll suggest often to people like get a talisman. If you're afraid of like speaking up in big meetings and thinking, using your voice, then hold something. And when the idea comes of, oh, I have this great idea, be like, okay, now's my chance. I got to do the speaking or
Mm,
post-it notes or whatever it is. What do you need to put in place to change things? So a lot of that work is in between the sessions, but we're doing the dismantling belief system in the sessions to
mm,
help anchor you in between sessions to change your patterns.
mm. It's obviously a very common thing of people are getting coaching because they have these limiting beliefs, these things that are holding them back on it. And it's a matter of you obviously breaking them down, right?
Every human, me, you, we all have our belief system, and we have to challenge our belief system in order to change.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the other side of people who are like so sure of who they are. They don't trust anybody around them to do the work because they're so great. They're the ones who come in and they're like 95s down the list. And then at the end of the 6 months, they might have things where at 80%. They went the opposite way because now they're self-aware of their behavior. They're aware of how other people around them see them, and they want to change and be a better leader that everyone um, looks to versus having to be the loudest voice in the room or the best person. Like, no one wants to be that either.
True. So you talked about in each one of the sessions, you're breaking these things down and seeking to have, okay, what are the action plans in between now and the next session? But even this example that you gave, some people they fall back and they have these different things. So what are different strategies or things that you do in general to kind of keep people more on track? Is it just getting crystal clear on naming action items? Is it you're texting them? What are some things that you do in order to make sure they stay on track?
So I will text people and accountability. I do a mid-session email. And so after every session, I'm doing a recap. I use Coach Accountable.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to Accountable for,
Yeah.
I love them in order. Are you familiar with their them?
The
They're
software, correct?
Yeah, they're great
Yes.
software that you can
Mm-hmm.
like sign documents, send leads, do billing, everything. I love them.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I capture my notes after every single session, and then mid between our two sessions, I'll send an email recap saying, checking
Mm-hmm.
in, what are you doing? What's working? These are the things that we discussed. Where are you with things? And then we'll just do an email back and forth with
Mm-hmm.
people. And so I find that that's why I mean, you can do a lot in 3 months, but I find that in 3 months, you can make a lot of change. But I think it's hard for people to continue the change
Mm-hmm.
because you can get that initial excitement change. But the long term, I think, really helps to cement the new behavior and the new beliefs.
Yeah. Well, because it's people are not where they want to be because they're missing something, as we talked about, the limiting beliefs, or they need to overcome it. And oftentimes it's not just a quick, sometimes it can be a quick little fix, but oftentimes it's reprogramming and doing all of that. And some people are open to change. Some people, it's like, no, you got to hear this 7 times before you're like, oh, I get it. So,
Exactly. And I'm also like, okay, this sticky pain point,
mm,
the universe is going to give you another. So if
mm,
you have this one type of relationship that's always difficult, then just wait, because once you resolve this one and it's going well, the universe is going to throw you another into the chain to see whether or not you've fixed this pattern. So be
mhm,
aware of it. Keep your eyes open. Notice, what am I doing? How am I responding? Am I responding my old way or in the way that I want to respond?
true. So you've had them and everything from there. You've gone through the 6 months. What do you typically do on the back end? Is it okay? Now let's identify the next problem that we need to work on and do another 6 months, or how do you typically do that? And how do you also prime people to want to ascend, let's say, into the next step?
Yeah, I find that it's a really natural process of knowing when people are complete and
Mm-hmm.
when they're ready to move on or not. Like I said, I want people to feel that. I want people to feel like, you know what, I'm good. I'm ready to take these challenges. Just a couple of weeks ago, I had worked with a person for, I think, about a year, a little over a year. And they emailed me and they're like, it's back. That same, speaking of a relationship problem, they're this person. So we just got on the phone for 45 minutes, free, no, just talked him through it. And then we had a couple of emails back and forth 2 weeks later, over the next 2 weeks, and it resolved itself and it's going good.
Mm,
So I always say when I'm done working with somebody, we don't get to go through this process without having people in our, like, being in each other's lives. I
mm,
will always want to support you. If you want a phone call on the off, I'm happy to jump on that. If we have this long relationship, and many of them will say, okay, I'm in a new role and now I'm ready to hire you again and start going. So I'm a big fan of being in service,
mm,
and I just trust that it will always come back to me.
yeah, I like it. Well, I know from the last call and before this call, I could probably go a million other directions of stuff to go ahead and
Yes.
talk about. For now, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. So one question I do have before we go ahead and completely kind of finish it up, for anybody who's like, wow, like Jessica, I love your message. I really resonate. I want to get connected with you, or hey, I'm maybe interested in possibly working with you. I'm in this position. I'm on to do X, Y, and Z. What is the best way for people to get in communication with you?
LinkedIn probably, and it's Jessica Burnett McClure is on my socials, has my maiden name in there as well. And then and just send me, or my website, Jessica Burnett McClure. I also dabble in human design. I know we didn't talk about it, but if that's intriguing to anybody, it's an astrology placement that talks about where your purpose and things are. And I incorporate that into my coaching. So you can also pull up your chart and all that. But I usually offer a 30-minute conversation if you are truly interested in coaching, and to see if that's the right fit for you, if I am the right house, the real estate that you will love or not. So LinkedIn and my website are probably the best two places to find me.
Okay, perfect. Well, it was great chatting as always. I'm sure we'll probably continue other conversations, stuff like that. But
And
regardless, great seeing you, and thanks for being a guest on the podcast.
thank you for having me. I appreciate you and all that you do.
Of course, absolutely. So, with that said, everyone, that is going to wrap up this episode of the Coaching Uncovered podcast. I hope that you were able to get as much value as I did out of this episode. The two biggest things that really stood out for me personally is the approach of what she did when it came to sales. I like the fact of she says, I want to give you a taste. I'm just going to coach you. I'm not going to be talking about myself. It's look, here's what it's like to be coached with me. You get a taste of it. And then from them, based on whether you like it or not, then we go ahead and we work together. And she's not afraid. She talked to him in the beginning. Maybe it was a little scary putting the price out. She's like, look, here's what it is to work with me. Like, how do we want to continue to move forward? So that's one thing I really liked. Second thing I really liked that she mentioned was the science experiments, right? Because that's one of the hardest parts I see with so many coaches. They're like, oh no, it needs to be perfect, or it needs to be, I need to build this, this, and this, and this. No, got to get started, put something out there. Is it going to be perfect the first time? No. But then based on what feedback we get, what responses we get, then we iterate, then we improve, and then we can actually start making progress rather than spending, I talk to so many people, 6 months, a year, 2 years. Oh, I wanted to start coaching, but I'm building a website or I'm doing this. It's just a matter of doing the science experiments, as Jessica put it, and continue to iterate from there. So once again, I hope you got as much value as I did. If you do like this episode, please make sure to go ahead and drop a like. If you're not subscribed already, make sure to go ahead and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Coaching Uncovered podcast.